Hi, AJ Hartley here, novelist, Shakespeare professor, fan of various aspects of Japanese culture, and this is part 3 in a series of videos that I'm doing on travel in Japan. And today I want to focus on accommodation. Where to stay. So, again, unless you are really doing the free spirit thing and looking for accommodation while you are there, which I would not do that. I like to have a sense of where I'm going to be on any given day so that I can book my travel accordingly. And I would book your hotel accommodation before you go. And again, you can use any of the sort of standard travel sites like Travelocity and things like that. Look at particular towns where you want to be and book accommodation. Now, there are a number of different ways, obviously, of staying in Japan, and we usually try to sort of mix it up so we get a variety of places to stay while we're there. Standard Western hotels are the dominant, where you will have an actual bed or beds, depending on how many of you are in the room, where the Japaneseness of the room is fairly minimal. You may get a Japanese bathroom, but for the most part, the room is what you would expect from any Western hotel, except that it's smaller. And in many of the places that we stayed, because there were 3 of us sharing a room, there was almost no space for anything other than the beds. Even luggage becomes kind of difficult to handle. So that's something else that I would add when you're planning your trip. Travel light, travel fast. That's always the way. A lot of hotels have laundry facilities. So I would say, if you're going for, say, 3 weeks, make sure you've got enough clothes for maybe 10 days and plan on doing laundry halfway through the trip. Because if you take a ton of stuff, even if the airlines will allow you to take, multiple big cases per person, you're going to struggle to find ways to use them and they're going to be in the way. The other thing is that traveling on trains with a lot of suitcases is not easy. You don't want to be carrying more than one suitcase, wheeled, large suitcase per person and a backpack. That's all I would do. Beyond that, it's going to get difficult. Because Japan is a very tightly packed country and everything is built on those lines, So trains have overhead luggage racks and so on. Not all the really big cases are going to fit on there, and then you're going to need to put them somewhere else. Buses, even more tricky, So yeah, I would try to keep your luggage to a minimum. But the core point, be prepared for the fact that the hotel room, for the most part, is going to be a place to sleep and not much else, because you're not going to have a lot of space. That's with the Western style hotels, which have a very sort of businessy kind of feel. You get more space with a traditional Japanese hotel or Ryokan, and that's because in a Ryokan you get a tatami room or rooms, and the bed will be a futon. And the futon will be laid out for you in the evening, rolled out, and then it'll fill the room. But then when you get up and you go to breakfast and you come back to your room, the futon will be gone, will be packed away, and then you have an open room. I really like Ryokan as a sort of way of getting a good taste of traditional Japanese culture. You generally get food included, at least breakfast, though often half board as well, so you get an evening meal as well. You will not have a lot of choices with those kind of meals, and they tend to be very traditional, right? So we can talk about what that is, but it means you get a traditional Japanese breakfast. You may have a choice of a Western breakfast or a Japanese breakfast. As with everything in Japan, every time you choose the Western option, it will not be quite what you expect, and it probably won't be quite as good as you are used to. So I would always say, whenever possible, choose the Japanese option. because that's what they're going to do best, you know. Um, but a Japanese breakfast in a ryokan is going to be hardcore traditional Japanese food. It's likely to be rice and miso or similar soup. It's going to be some sort of pickles, skimono, sort of salt pickles. It's going to usually have some sort of fish um, cooked, usually, I think, for breakfast. You may have some sort of egg dish, but the egg is often sweetened. Um, so yeah, and likewise for dinner, you know, in a lot of places you're going to get local specialties. You're going to get a multi-course meal with including sashimi and tempura and some sort of noodle dish and rice. You're going to get a lot of Japanese food, and it's great, you know. But if you're not used to it, it can be a little bit of a facing. It's always absolutely beautiful. So even if you struggle to eat it, you'll get some good pictures out of it. But yeah, so the ryokan is something that I would recommend. Now, usually they are a little bit more expensive, and because they are fewer and smaller than big Western style hotels, they sell out faster. So I would be looking to book stuff like that a good 6 months in advance if you can. Otherwise, you're going to find you don't have as many options. As far as cost is concerned, you know, we stayed in a lot of places, and I think we averaged something like $150 US per night, which is not bad in a major city. You know, I would expect to pay that for a decent place anywhere in the US these days, you know, and in some cases, you know, quite a bit more. So yeah, an average of about 150. One specialized form of the ryokan is to stay in a Buddhist temple. These are, of course, fairly few and far between. But if you get the chance, I would recommend it as a particularly special form of the traditional Japanese hotel. I've only done it once. We stayed in a temple in Minobu in Yamanashi a few years ago, and it was a wonderful experience. I think it was a 2-night minimum, and it's very like a traditional Japanese hotel, like a ryokan, except that you're in the grounds of the temple itself. There are services in the morning. It's very quiet, very peaceful, and as is often the case with these kind of places, it's pretty remote. So, you know, these are not places to go if you're looking for a lot of nightlife. I would say that's true of the ryokan experience generally as well. The things get quiet pretty early. You're kind of on a sun clock. When the sun goes down, people are going to bed. When the sun comes up, people are getting up. And that was particularly true of staying at a Buddhist temple. But it was a wonderful experience. I really, really enjoyed it. And the food was fantastic. I really love the ryokan experience. If you can, try to do it at least once. They are going to cost you more than a regular hotel, but they offer something other than simply a place to sleep. They often have gardens attached. They often have onsen attached. And it gives you a sort of traditional place to hang out and absorb the atmosphere. It's almost a mode of being, right? That you sort of step back in time and go into a quieter, more traditional place. And they're beautiful, and the food is great. And I would strongly recommend that you try it at least once. So the ryokan is the sort of traditional option with the tatami rooms. The next step along from there is something like an onsen hotel. Onsen means it is the sort of hot spring, right? And the onsen hotels are built around the public baths that are fed naturally by hot springs, particularly in sort of areas with a lot of volcanic activity. They tend to be very traditional. They're not, the hotels themselves are structurally not as traditional as a ryokan. They're often sort of mid to late 20th century. On this trip, we only stayed in one onsen hotel, and what really struck me was how old the clientele were. Very few young people. It's just, you know, Japanese people might correct me on this, but my sense is that it's not a popular young person's thing to do. One of the issues is that, the vast majority of onsen are still single sex. And it's one of the reasons we don't tend to do them that much, because my wife is not particularly into it, and I don't want to go and sit there in a room full of strange guys by myself. Um, the other thing is that some onsen are restrictive about things like tattoos. Traditionally, a lot of onsen hotels don't let people use the baths if they have tattoos. Um, so at least some of that is connected to yakuza. But of course, a lot of Westerners have tattoos, and that can be a problem. So, if you have a lot of tattoos, I would think twice about booking an onsen hotel if you're intending to use the onsen. As I say, they tend to be. My sense of the onsen that we saw on this trip was that they're often a little run down, because the industry is fading, if not actually dying. It's not, maybe this is a post-pandemic thing, but a lot of these places look like they could really use some work, and they needed sprucing up. But it's often a good mid-price option to get some of that traditional Japanese hotel stuff. It's not exactly a ryokan. It's sort of between a ryokan and a Western-style hotel. Often you get the same food options as the ryokan, and it's not quite as swanky, and therefore not quite as swankily priced. So yeah, that's a good option as well. The other thing, of course, is the equivalent of a kind of Airbnb. And you'll find, when you go through Travelocity and stuff like that, that you will have places that are basically apartments for rent. And these are often really good deals. You often finish up with more space, and you often finish up with that sort of traditional Japanese apartment feel, including the tatami and the shoji on the windows and the husuma, the sliding screen doors, with a separate kitchen and so on. These are really good options, particularly if you're going to be in a place for a few days and want the option of not eating out all the time. So that's a good thing to do. The downside of those kind of places is that frequently it means there's no front desk, right? That they'll send you like some sort of passcode or something to be able to get in, but they are very strict on check-in and check-out times. So if you arrive in the city, 5 hours before your check-in, so you can't check in until 3 o'clock, and you've got all your luggage and you want to do stuff in the city, you're not going to be able to go to the hotel and leave the luggage because there's nobody there, right? And you can't get in until it's your check-in time. At a traditional hotel, whether that's a ryokan or an onsen hotel or a Western style hotel, you can go, you can leave your luggage, and then you can go out and do stuff and then check in later on. But in these kind of apartment situations, you can't. The solution in that is that usually there are lockers, coin lockers, that you can use at the railway station that are big enough to accommodate your luggage. So what I would do, if you know that you're going to be arriving before check-in, just leave your bags in the railway station. You pay a few hundred yen, again, very safe. You get your key, and then you go off and you do your stuff and you hang out and you enjoy yourself, and then pick up your stuff and go check into the hotel when it's time. That's what I would do. One of the things that you notice in Japanese hotels of all stripes is that, given how little space there is, the bathroom is often quite large. And usually it's because it's a traditional Japanese bathroom. And the idea of the traditional Japanese bathroom is that you wash yourself before getting in the bath, right? There's a separate shower of some sort. The room is designed so that it will drain. You're supposed to soap yourself off and wash yourself and so on, and then use the bath to soak. And certainly, in years past, there have always been signs saying, "Don't put soap in the tub." Um, on this trip, I don't think I saw any of those signs. So I don't know if people have become a little less um, anxious about that. I can't think. I mean, it's simply a question of traditional practice. I don't think there's a reason not to put soap in the bath, other than the fact that that's not something that you do, right? So yeah, so often the bathroom is going to be quite large, but yeah, I mean, I would avoid putting soap in the tub if you can. The Japanese bathroom, of course, also features the Japanese toilet. Japan has given the world two kinds of toilet. One of them is one of the worst things to ever exist. The squat toilet, still found in schools and such, or used to be. I don't know if it still is so much. Um, I didn't see any of the squat toilets on this trip. I think my wife encountered one in some public restroom somewhere, but you don't tend to encounter them in the same way anymore, which is all to the good. What you do get in your accommodation more often than not is a version of the new Japanese toilet, which is the proper sit-down toilet, Western style toilet, I should say, not the proper toilet. But of course, Japan being Japan has made it awesome. So you get the heated seat and the various bidet functions and the deodorizer and the automatic lids, and they are superb and fantastic. And if you look around in the airport as you leave, you will see gaijin men trying to look cool, carrying the electric toilet seat that they have purchased to install at home because they're so awesome. Incidentally, you can buy versions of the Japanese toilet fitting for bathrooms in the US and the UK and elsewhere. Whether you want to, they come in a number of different forms, which depend on whether you have either a hot water access point close to the toilet or an electrical supply close to the toilet. But to be honest, the cold water ones are great. They're really easy to install, and I recommend them. But anyway, that's a side note. Japanese toilets, awesome. Also, any kind of traditional hotel is going to assume that you will not wear your shoes inside. So when you're packing, make sure your socks are not full of holes, because you're going to have to take off your shoes from time to time. Even in Western style hotels, you'll often notice that there's a sort of a line on the carpet just inside the door, which is the sort of conceptual space where you're supposed to sort of take your shoes off before moving into the room proper. Is this going to be rigorously policed? No, but be respectful of local customs and practices. Something I will say more about later. And that's all for now. The next video in this series will be on conduct and behavior for foreign tourists. In the meantime, as ever, please like, comment, subscribe, share your experience if you have traveled, share your concerns or questions if you have not traveled to Japan, and I'll try to incorporate them in future videos. Plus, obviously, people can respond to comments in the comments for the video. Check out my Patreon page. Thank you, patrons. Check out my merchandise. Check out my books, particularly Hideki Smith, Demon Queller. You're probably sick of hearing me mention it, but I'm going to keep mentioning it. So until next time, thanks. Talk to you soon. Bye.